The vote was already over by the time humanity realized the chamber doors had sealed. No alarms. No shouting. Just a soft harmonic chime rippling through the galactic conclave as trillions of lives were reduced to a single line of text floating above the central dais. Unanimous resolution. Species designation. Humanity. Status. Termination approved. For a moment, no one moved. Even the elder races, beings who had watched stars be born and die, sat frozen as if the universe itself had inhaled and forgotten how to breathe. The silence was not peaceful. It was the kind that followed an extinction event, the kind that history tried very hard to forget. Humanity's representatives stood alone at the center ring, 5 figures dwarfed by the vast amphitheater of alien delegates. They had expected outrage, debate, at least hesitation. What they received instead was consensus. Across 1,000 worlds, screens flickered. On orbital habitats, on mining colonies, in deep space research stations, the same message appeared in 100,000 translated dialects. Humanity was no longer a member species. Humanity was a problem to be erased. What no one in that chamber understood, what none of them would understand until it was far too late, was that the vote had not ended the story. It had only begun the quietest war the galaxy would ever fight. The conclave speaker, a crystalline entity whose voice resonated directly in the nervous systems of every sentient present, finally broke the stillness. The execution would be merciful, it said. Contained. Clean. No orbital bombardments, no stellar ignitions. Humanity would simply be removed. Trade lanes closed. Energy grids disconnected. Navigation beacons darkened. A slow suffocation on a galactic scale. A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. Even among predators and empire builders, there was something unsettling about killing a species without firing a single shot. The speaker turned its multifaceted gaze toward the humans. "You may speak," it said, more out of protocol than courtesy. "Your words will not alter the outcome." Ambassador Elias Moreau did not shout. He did not plead. He did not rage. He smiled. It was a small thing, that smile. Almost gentle. Almost grateful. And for reasons no one could explain, several delegates felt an unexpected tightening in their chests. "Then let this be our final record," Moreau said. His voice carried without amplification, steady and calm. "Humanity acknowledges the judgment of the Galactic Conclave." A murmur rippled through the chamber. This was not how condemned species behaved. They begged. They threatened. They promised servitude. Humans did none of those things. Moreau continued. "We entered this galaxy as explorers. We were told the stars were shared, that intelligence was sacred, that survival was a collective effort." His eyes swept the chamber, meeting gazes that quickly looked away. "You taught us those ideals. We believed you." One of the elder delegates, an ancient being of living stone, rumbled in discomfort. "This is unnecessary," it said. "The vote stands." "Yes," Moreau replied softly. "It does." He turned slightly, gesturing to the other human delegates. Scientists. Diplomats. A soldier in formal dress, whose medals had been stripped of insignia to comply with conclave neutrality laws. "But understand this," Moreau said. "Humanity does not resist this verdict." That was when the first real crack appeared. Several delegates leaned forward. Resistance was expected. Sabotage. Terror campaigns. That was why the vote had been unanimous. Humanity was too unpredictable to be allowed to grow further. Not resist? We accept it, Moreau said. Because you misunderstand us. The conclave speaker's light flared. Clarify. Moreau's smile faded, replaced by something older. Something harder. You believe extinction requires violence. That survival demands dominance. That peace is maintained by force. He paused, letting the words settle. Those were never our greatest weapons. The chamber lights dimmed as the conclave began the formal severance sequence. Data links to human space blinked amber. Trade permissions revoked. Navigation corridors collapsed into classified nothingness. A delegate from the Rel Dominion hissed in satisfaction. They surrender already. They always do, another replied. Eventually. Moreau bowed his head, not in submission, but in acknowledgement. You will not hear from us again, he said. Not because we are gone. He looked up, eyes bright. But because you will forget how to listen. The chamber doors opened behind the human delegation. No guards escorted them. There was no need. Where could an extinct species run? As they walked out, the conclave speaker finalized the record. Humanity was officially designated a non-entity. Galactic law no longer applied to them. Their worlds were marked for reclamation once biological activity dropped below sustainable thresholds. The stars did not explode. No fleets mobilized. Nothing dramatic happened at all. That was the first mistake. On Earth, the message arrived at 3:17 Universal Time Coordinated. It bypassed civilian networks, routed directly into the Soul Defense Array, into research hubs, into quiet rooms where people who never appeared on broadcasts watched probabilities instead of news. The notification was simple. Cold. Administrative. Status update. Humanity. Galactic termination protocol initiated. For exactly 12 seconds, no one spoke. Then Director Anika Rao exhaled and closed her eyes. So, she said calmly, they finally agreed. Around her, holographic projections lit the room. Not weapons. Not fleet deployments. Models. Timelines. Contingency trees that branched and rebranched into futures the galaxy had never imagined. A young analyst swallowed hard. Do we respond? Rao opened her eyes. There was no fear in them. Only focus. We already did, she said. Across human space, systems that had never been connected activated in perfect silence. Archives unlocked. Research once deemed too slow, too impractical, too subtle for wartime relevance shifted into priority. No ships launched. No armies assembled. Humanity did not rally. It reorganized. The conclave expected desperation. What it received instead was absence. Human trade convoys failed to arrive at ports. No distress calls followed. No protests. No pirate activity. Human space simply went quiet. At first, the galaxy was relieved. Markets adjusted. Trade routes recalculated. Species that had relied on human engineers found alternatives. Human cultural channels vanished from the galactic mesh, their music and stories archived as curiosities of a failed species. Within 6 months, most civilizations stopped talking about humans at all. Within a year, navigation errors began increasing along former human corridors. Minor at first. A missed jump. A delayed arrival. Statistical noise. Within 2 years, the first star went dark. Not exploded. not consumed. Simply silent. Its output dropped below predicted models, as if reality itself had miscalculated. Astrophysicists scrambled. Theories spread. Exotic matter decay. Subspace shear. Instrument error. No one connected the event to humanity. Why would they? The species was extinct. On a forgotten listening post at the edge of human space, Ambassador Moreau stood alone, watching the stars. A small device pulsed softly at his wrist, receiving confirmations from systems that did not officially exist. He did not smile this time. He whispered to no one and everyone, "You should have asked us what we do when we lose." Far beyond the reach of the conclave, beyond mapped space and recorded history, something vast and patient adjusted its parameters. Not a weapon. A promise. And the galaxy, confident in its unanimous decision, never noticed the moment the stars began choosing silence over obedience. Somewhere, long after the vote, a child on a distant world would ask why the night sky looked emptier than the old charts showed. No one would have an answer. And humanity, still breathing, still thinking, still watching, would finally begin the work they had been preparing for since the day they learned they were not alone. The galaxy did not panic when the second star dimmed. Panic required recognition, and recognition required patterns. This was still being called coincidence. The star was catalogued as KX-441, a stable orange dwarf that had burned predictably for billions of years. Its sudden drop in energy output was subtle enough that automated systems flagged it for review instead of alarm. Committees formed. Reports circulated. The word anomaly appeared often, always paired with reassurances. The conclave released a statement. Stellar variance was normal, it said. The universe was large. Uncertainty was expected. What the statement did not mention was that KX-441 sat directly along a former human logistics corridor. That omission was deliberate. Within the sealed archives of the Galactic Science Collective, a junior researcher named Terrify ran simulations long after her shift ended. She was young by her species standards, still burdened with curiosity before bureaucracy could crush it. Her models refused to stabilize. Every projection that accounted for natural causes failed to match the data. The energy loss curve was too smooth, too intentional. Stars did not fade like this. They flared. They collapsed. They died violently. They did not go quiet. Terrify's cross-referenced the coordinates with historical maps and froze when she saw the overlay. Human space. Formerly human space. Regions the conclave had marked as irrelevant. Her supervisor dismissed the concern. "Humans are gone," he said flatly. "You're chasing ghosts." But ghosts, Terrify thought, did not obey equations. While the galaxy rationalized, humanity worked. Not from Earth alone, but from habitats hidden inside gravitational shadows, from research stations buried in rogue asteroids, from places deliberately overlooked because they offered no strategic value to anyone thinking in terms of fleets and borders. Humanity had learned early that visibility invited control. Director Rouse stood before a council that did not officially exist. There were no flags, no ranks displayed. Just people. Scientists, engineers, philosophers, former soldiers. The kinds of minds the conclave had once dismissed as inefficient because they asked too many questions. "The severance is complete," Rouse said. "Galactic networks no longer route through us. Surveillance coverage is minimal." A man with silver hair nodded. "As predicted." "They're comfortable." They believe extinction is loud, Rao replied. They expect screams. She gestured, and the room filled with layered simulations. Not explosions. Not invasions. Cascading probabilities. Economic dependencies. Infrastructure fragility mapped across light years. This is what they never modeled, she said. Interdependence. Humanity had not dominated the galaxy militarily. It had integrated. Human engineers optimized alien reactors. Human mathematicians stabilized navigation algorithms no one fully understood anymore. Human mediators rewrote trade protocols to prevent wars no one remembered nearly starting. They had woven themselves into the system quietly, efficiently. Then the system voted them out. Phase 2 begins, Rouse said. On 100 worlds, maintenance routines failed at once. Not catastrophically. Just enough to require manual intervention. A recalibration error here. A timing desynchronization there. Nothing traced back to humans. The Conclave dispatched advisory teams. Minor disruptions were part of galactic life. Still, the reports were persistent. A power consortium in the Valerian Reach experienced rolling blackouts despite surplus generation. A jump gate in the Rel Dominion misaligned by fractions of a degree, increasing transit times across 3 sectors. Insurance rates climbed. Tempers followed. Still no panic. The third star dimmed. This one powered a pilgrimage world sacred to an elder race. When its light weakened, tide shifted. Climate models failed. Priests argued with physicists. Both were wrong. The elder race demanded answers. The conclave convened emergency hearings. Terralise watched from the gallery, her data clutched tightly. When she requested permission to present her findings, the speaker denied it. This is not the time for speculation, it said. Order must be maintained. Order. That word echoed uncomfortably. Meanwhile, Ambassador Moreau was very busy being dead. Officially, he had perished when human life support grids collapsed. His name appeared on memorials. His likeness archived in diplomatic histories as a cautionary tale. In reality, he stood aboard a vessel that did not appear on any sensor grid. It did not use stealth in the conventional sense. It simply did not announce itself to systems that no longer expected humans to exist. Moreau reviewed status updates. Each one confirmed another thread pulled, another dependency exposed. No deaths reported. That mattered. A younger officer hesitated before speaking. Sir, some of them are starting to notice. Moreau nodded. Good. Curiosity is necessary. But what if they trace it back to us? They won't, Moreau said. Not because we're perfect. Because they're arrogant. The officer frowned. Arrogant? They believe extinction is irreversible, Moreau replied. They believe votes change reality. He looked out at the starfield. They forgot that survival is a skill. On the conclave world, unrest spread. Not rebellion. Anxiety. Markets fluctuated. Energy reserves dipped. Delegates argued over resource reallocation. Someone finally said the word no one wanted to hear. Humans. The chamber fell silent. A Rel delegate scoffed. Impossible. They're gone. Are they? Another asked quietly. Or did we simply stop listening? The conclave speaker dismissed the suggestion, but doubt had already entered the system. Doubt was corrosive. Terralise took a risk. She leaked her research. The data spread faster than she expected. Scientists across the galaxy began comparing notes. Patterns emerged. Human infrastructure fingerprints were everywhere. Like ghost limbs, the galaxy had learned to move without thinking. They had never replaced human systems. They had just assumed they always would be there. When the fourth star dimmed, panic finally arrived. Not screaming panic. The worst kind. The kind that made leaders cautious, conservative, slow. Emergency protocols were enacted. Fleets mobilized, not to attack, but to reassure. Visibility increased. Borders tightened. And for the first time since the vote, a message was sent toward former human space. There was no response, because the message had been routed through a relay humanity had designed and quietly turned off. In the deep archives beneath Earth, an old file was accessed. A philosophy paper written centuries earlier, dismissed as impractical. It asked a simple question. What happens if a species chooses not to fight back? Director Rao read the final line aloud to the room. Absence, she said, is leverage. The fifth star did not dim. It vanished. Not physically. It was still there, burning, radiating, but no signal from it reached the galaxy anymore. As if space itself had decided that light was optional. The conclave speaker convened the chamber in full emergency session. This time, the doors sealed not to keep others out, but to keep fear in. We may have miscalculated, it said. That was the first admission of error in conclave history. Far from the chamber, Moreau received the update. He closed his eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of it. They're ready, the officer said. What's our next move? Moreau opened his eyes. We remind them, he said softly, why humans were invited into the stars in the first place. Outside the viewport, the galaxy looked the same as ever. It just hadn't realized yet that the rules had changed. The conclave had faced wars before. Loud ones. Bright ones. Conflicts measured in hull losses and casualty projections. This was different. There was no enemy fleet to point at, no front line to reinforce. Just absence spreading like a pressure drop through civilization. Delegates arrived late. Transport delays were blamed on gate congestion, though no congestion existed. When the chamber finally filled, the usual ceremonial hum felt strained, like a voice pretending not to tremble. The speaker did not waste time. We have confirmed intentional manipulation of stellar communication pathways, it announced. The method is unknown. The perpetrator is unconfirmed. Everyone knew what it did not say. A delegate from the Valerian Reach slammed a limb against the floor. This is madness. We erased them. We followed protocol. Protocol, another snapped back, has never accounted for ghosts. Terrify stood in the gallery again, this time not hiding. She had sent her data to too many colleagues to be silenced quietly. If they removed her now, it would only confirm what everyone already suspected. The stars aren't dying, she called out. Her voice echoed thin but steady. They're being ignored. The chamber erupted. You claim sapient interference with fundamental physics? A Dominion scientist demanded. No, Terrify replied. I claim redirection. Humanity isn't destroying stars. They're rerouting information. Light still travels. We just don't receive it. That's impossible. So is instantaneous translation, Terrify said. Until humans refined it. So was stable multilateral trade between predatory empires. Until humans brokered it. You didn't notice because they made it look easy. Silence followed, heavy with reluctant recognition. The speaker's facets dimmed slightly. "If this is true," it said, "then our infrastructure was never truly yours." Terrify finished. "You outsourced comprehension." Across the galaxy, effects compounded. Navigation without stellar references grew unreliable. Old charts became lies. Automated systems defaulted to human-authored subroutines that no longer updated. Entire sectors slowed down. Not collapsed. Slowed. Ships arrived weeks late. Supply chains stretched thin. Nothing broke catastrophically, which only made it worse. There was no single crisis to rally against, just a growing sense that the galaxy was wading through invisible resistance. On Earth, the work continued with almost ritual calm. Director Rao watched as a projection of galactic traffic adjusted in real time, flows bending around blind spots. "We're approaching threshold," an analyst said. "They'll be forced to respond directly." Rao nodded. "Good. We don't want collapse." A former admiral frowned. "Some of them are already calling this an act of war." "It isn't," Rao replied. "It's a withdrawal of consent." She turned. "We're not attacking. We're opting out." That distinction mattered to humans. It always had. Moreau's vessel drifted at the edge of a system once home to a thriving trade hub. Now it was quiet. Not dead. Just paused. He reviewed intercepted conclave transmissions, watching fear slowly overtake pride. "They're convening again," the officer said. "Emergency proposal. They want to reverse the vote." Moreau's expression hardened. "They want absolution without understanding." "What do we do?" "We listen," he said. "For now." The message, when it came, was broadcast on every frequency humanity might conceivably monitor. It was careful, apologetic, filled with words like reconsideration and mutual survival. It did not acknowledge wrongdoing. Director Rao read it twice, then archived it without response. "They don't know how to talk to equals," she said. The sixth star dimmed. This one was important. It powered a manufacturing world responsible for producing conclave standard hull plating. As its output dropped from usable ranges, shipyards fell silent. Fleets stayed docked not because of fear, but because they physically could not deploy. Military power evaporated without a single battle. The realization hit like delayed shock. Strength was not measured in weapons, but in maintenance, in logistics, in the invisible web that allowed power to exist at all. Humans had been the web. A Dominion warlord, desperate and furious, ordered an unauthorized strike into former human territory. A show of force. Proof that extinction could still be enforced. The fleet jumped in, and did not jump out. Not destroyed. Not disabled. The jump coordinates simply refused. Space folded according to equations that no longer applied. The fleet was stranded in a region where stars provided no navigational signal, drifting blind. The galaxy watched in horror as rescue attempts failed. Humanity said nothing. Terralise received a private message. No origin. No signature. Just a question. "Do you understand now?" She did. And it terrified her. The conclave speaker convened a closed session. No recordings. No observers. "We underestimated them," it said. "Yes," an elder replied. "Because we judged them by our standards. We believed power required domination. and they believed power required trust. The chamber was quiet for a long time. Finally, the speaker spoke again. Open a channel. Not to their governments. To their people. On Earth, the request arrived. Director Rao considered it. Then nodded. Allow it. The channel opened to a single human voice. Not a leader. Not a general. A teacher. We didn't want this, she said calmly. We wanted to belong. The speaker responded. Then why do this? The teacher did not hesitate. Because you decided belonging was conditional. She leaned closer to the camera. Tell me, if your world voted you out of existence, would you keep holding it together for them? The question spread across the galaxy, replayed on countless screens. For the first time, empathy pierced the fear. Moreau watched the transmission end. That, he murmured, was necessary. The officer nodded slowly. They're starting to see us again. Yes, Moreau said. Now comes the hardest part, which is deciding whether we let them. Far away, the seventh star flickered, not dimming, not vanishing, but pulsing, as if waiting for instruction. The galaxy held its breath. The seventh star waited. That fact alone unsettled every astrophysicist who understood what stars were supposed to do. They did not hesitate. They did not pause in anticipation. Nuclear fusion did not care about politics, morality, or extinction votes. And yet, this one pulsed softly, its emissions rising and falling in mathematically perfect intervals, like a held breath. The conclave chamber reconvened in a state that history would later describe as humbled. The banners still hung. The rituals were still observed. But the certainty was gone. Where once the delegates had spoken as architects of fate, they now spoke like tenants afraid they had angered the landlord. The speaker addressed the assembly without ceremonial preamble. We are no longer in control of the situation, it said. Denial will not restore it. No one argued. Reports flowed in from every sector. Navigation without human frameworks had degraded beyond acceptable margins. Automated governance systems, once praised as marvels of efficiency, stalled when edge cases accumulated faster than non-human oversight could resolve them. Conflicts did not erupt, but neither did resolutions. The galaxy was not collapsing. It was stalling. Terrify stood among the delegates now, not as an observer, but as an advisor. The irony was not lost on her. Humanity, erased from the conclave, had become the silent standard against which all functionality was measured. They are not punishing us, she said when given the floor. They are demonstrating absence. A Dominion lord bristled. That distinction is meaningless to worlds going dark. It is the only distinction that matters, Terrify replied. Punishment seeks suffering. Absence seeks acknowledgement. The speaker's facets shifted. Then what do they want? The answer arrived before Terrify could speak. The seventh star brightened. Not fully. Just enough to remind the galaxy that it could. On Earth, Director Rao watched the change register across 100 monitoring systems. They're ready, she said. Moreau stood beside her now, no longer hiding. Humanity had reached the point where secrecy no longer provided advantage. The galaxy already knew who held the threads. They're afraid, Moreau said. Yes, Rao replied. But fear isn't enough. A secure channel opened. Not a broadcast. A conversation. The conclave speaker appeared, its crystalline form dimmer than before. Humanity, it said, abandoning protocol entirely. We request dialogue. Rouse studied it carefully. You already had dialogue, she said. You voted. We were wrong. Those 3 words carried more mass than any fleet ever had. Rao did not respond immediately. Silence, she had learned, was instructive. The speaker continued. We believed we were preserving stability. We believed humanity posed an unacceptable risk. And now? Rao asked. Now we understand the risk was never your strength, the speaker said. It was our dependence. Moreau leaned forward. Dependence isn't weakness, he said. Unacknowledged dependence is. The speaker inclined slightly, a gesture that once would have been unthinkable. What are your terms? Across the galaxy, countless beings leaned closer to their screens. This was the moment history would hinge on. Revenge or reconciliation? Dominion or dissolution? Rao answered simply. Recognition. Of what? That humanity is not infrastructure, she said. We are not background processes you can delete when inconvenient. The speaker nodded slowly. Agreed. And, Rao continued, that no species can be voted out of existence by consensus. Ever again. A ripple of unease passed through the conclave delegates. This would change everything. Yes, the speaker said at last. Agreed. Moreau added the final condition. And we do not return to the old system. The speaker's light flickered. Clarify. We will help, Moreau said. We will reconnect what we disconnected. But not as silent caretakers. Not as invisible glue. Ralph finished the thought. We participate as equals. Fully visible. Fully heard. The 7-star pulsed again, brighter now. The conclave voted. This time, it was not unanimous. And that was the point. The resolution passed with dissent recorded and preserved. Humanity was reinstated, not as a subordinate member, but as a co-author of galactic law. The extinction vote was formally nullified, archived not as precedent, but as warning. Across the galaxy, systems came back online. Slowly. Carefully. Light returned to blind regions. Navigation stabilized. Trade resumed. The stars did not all brighten at once. They responded selectively, as if testing trust. On the pilgrimage world, tides normalized. In the Valrian Reach, power grids stabilized. The stranded Dominion fleet received coordinates home, no explanation attached. Humanity did not gloat, did not demand reparations, did not erect monuments to its near death. It taught. Human engineers documented systems they had once maintained silently. Human diplomats trained successors instead of replacing them. Human philosophers sat in chambers where force had once spoken louder than reason. The galaxy learned something it had never needed to before. How to listen. Terralise visited Earth years later, walking beneath a sky unpolluted by orbital debris. She met the teacher whose words had changed everything. Do you trust us now? Terralise asked. The teacher smiled. Trust isn't static, she said. It's maintained. Above them, the stars burned normally again. No pulses. No pauses. Except one. Far out, beyond mapped space, a star flickered briefly, then steadied. A reminder. In the conclave archives, the extinction vote was still accessible, marked with a single annotation added by human hands. We survived not because we fought harder, but because we refused to disappear quietly. The galaxy would never forget that lesson. And somewhere, a child looking up at the night sky would ask why the stars mattered. This time, someone would answer,